Alright, so today I'm going to try something new. Something fresh. Something hip. Okay, it's not really hip. I think politics is probably the least hip thing that I could talk about. So of course, that means I'm going to do a video about politics. I want to do one every once in a while in a segment we're going to call Keith Does Politics and Breaks It Down. Alright, so today's topic, the sequester. So let's start from the beginning. What is the sequester? The sequester is a tool used by Congress, who are also tools, that was meant to spur leaders into making a bipartisan and easily agreeable way to cut spending and increase revenues. And it was meant to help, but there was this giant ticking time bomb in the background. The goal was to make this sequester so unattractive and so unappealing that the politicians would have to compromise. Spoiler alert, they did. So now, we are left with the sequester. $1.2 trillion in automatic spending cuts across the board. I'm going to talk about California specifically a little bit because that's where I live. I'm going to link to a site where you can see your state and a sort of breakdown of where you live. So education. California will lose about $88 million in funding for primary and secondary education. That's about 1,210 teachers who are at risk of losing their job, as well as the 320 schools that would probably lose funding from the state. Have a kid in Head Start? Probably not anymore. 8,200 kids are getting kicked out of it. Like clean air? What about clean water? About $12.4 million in environmental cuts and about $2 million for fish and wildlife. Vaccines for children, which I think we can all agree are pretty cool, right? It's getting cut by $1.1 million. That means about 15,000 less shots. What about violence against women? Awful, right? Well, it's being cut $795,000. So that means about 3,000 less women who are going to have their cases fulfilled. Let's get bigger here. Let's talk about the entire country. All of us, Americans, none of you Canadians. We've had a lot of good talk recently about mental health and the state of it in the United States, which I think is great and a conversation we should be having. But if the sequester happens, we're going to lose funding for about 370,000 patients, including emotionally disturbed children. The FDA will be doing like 2,000 less food inspections, so I hope you like horse meat. Do you travel via the aeroplanes a lot? Well, it's gonna suck. The equivalent of 5,000 border control agents will be furloughed or laid off. At our busiest airports like JFK or LAX or O'Hare, they expect peak waiting time to be about 4 hours. 4 hours in line. Yay! Hey, want a road trip with me to Mexico? Well, I hope you've got your iPod loaded up because it's going to be about 5 or 6 hours sitting in line waiting to get into Mexico. And what about small businesses? They're the backbone of this country, right? That's what we keep hearing. They're going to have to be a backbone with like $900 million less in funding for guaranteed loans. National parks. We all love national parks, right? Yellowstone, Yosemite, those other ones. Well, they're all getting shortened operating hours, closed facilities, and cuts to visitor services. And all those small businesses in the area, they're gonna probably have some troubles dealing with the fact that visitors and tourists aren't coming nearly as much. Think of that mom and pop shop that you may have rented a mountain bike from that one time you were gonna mountain bike and then you just stayed in a hotel all day eating. Special education will lose about 7,200 teachers, aides, and other staff who are instrumental to kids with disabilities making it through school. Meals on Wheels will be providing about 4 million less meals. For a senior who's enrolled in Meals on Wheels, that usually provides about 50% of their daily food. So homelessness is kind of a big deal in San Francisco. More than 100,000 formerly homeless people, including veterans and children, would be removed from their houses because the government will no longer be able to afford them. Where does that put them? Most likely it means they'll no longer be the formerly homeless. Cuts to the AIDS drug assistance program would result in about 7,400 patients not having access to the life-saving and critical HIV medication. Also something like 420,000 fewer free HIV tests, which could, of course, result in higher HIV rates. These are just some of the things that are going to happen if the sequester passes on Friday. Like I said before, there's a link down there to find out what's going to happen in your state, as well as what's going to happen in the country as a whole. I hope that my little burritos know that you can always call your congresswoman or congressman as well as your senator, and voice your opinion on how you feel about things about the sequester or anything that's going on politically that affects you. And so, little burritos, that ends the first episode of Keith Does Politics. Leave a comment below to tell me what you know about the sequester or how it's going to affect you personally if you're a teacher or a fireman or someone who it is going to affect personally. And until next time, I'll see you later. And then, of course, I mean, she eats it like the only way you can eat McDonald's. And I'm horrified, but I think I'm at the end of my terror.